Welcome to Big Bets on Campus Live. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern. I'm Mike Calabrese. I'm joined today by Ky McKeon. We're going to talk everything about the Elite Eight. It has been chalk madness this year, as you know. Every single one seed advancing to their regional final, and three of the four two seeds as well. We're going to hand out our best bets. But first, Ky, I want to see how you're feeling about this situation. Cinderella has long since been kicked out of the ball, but we have eight of the top nine in KenPom still remaining. What are your thoughts on the chalkiest Elite Eight of all time?
Yeah, just noticed that this morning. Fantastic for college basketball, I think. We always kind of want a fantastic Elite Eight, a fantastic Final Four. We want the upsets to happen early. Didn't get as many upsets this year, but I am thrilled with the results that we have. You said it, eight of the nine teams in KenPom in the tournament still is fantastic. I think the last time we had all one seeds in the Final Four was, help me out, not too long ago, maybe like within the last 10 years, and it was a great Final Four. And I'm excited for that to happen again, hopefully, fingers crossed. It's just going to get incredible down the stretch here. Bunch of great games. Can't wait.
Before we get into our best bets, what game, just from a pure viewing perspective, are you
Mm.
most excited to see this weekend?
Yeah, it's got to be Alabama Duke. You saw the Alabama BYU game. You saw the Duke Arizona game. Points, points, points. High level basketball, pro style basketball. It's going to be great.
March is the best month of the year, and not just for sports, but also for getting the best deal on Action Pro. You can get Action Pro for just over $5 a month for the rest of the year. And for the NCAA tournament, that means you'll get Sean Kerner's bracket simulation, Nick Giffin's player props. And if you care 30 minutes beforehand, you can get Stucky's picks. You can get my picks before they hit everyone else's feed. So in terms of getting the best number, getting the best juice on some of those money line bets, you want to get in early. So go to actionnetwork.com/March to get on board now. All right, Ky, let's start in the West region. Florida blitzed the Crab Five, to put it lightly. They, start the Kevin Willard era elsewhere a little bit earlier, while Texas Tech needed to erase a massive second half deficit against Arkansas to shock John Calipari and the Hogs in overtime. Just a quick note here. 12 teams have won in overtime in the Sweet 16 dating back to 1998. In the following game in the Elite Eight, they are 3-9 against the spread. What do you see in this first matchup with the Florida Gators, potentially getting to a Final Four, building back to those Billy Donovan days? Do you think it's going to be smooth sailing for the one seed?
I do think Florida ends up covering. My one concern is McCaslin is such a great coach and so hard to blow out, but maybe the overtime factor is, hey, we don't have much time to game plan. Quick turnaround, and certainly Texas Tech's front court depth is a huge problem against a Florida team that can go four guys against Toppin and Federico. You can throw Darian Williams at the four, but he is pretty small, and Florida has giants up front. I think that's going to be the ultimate factor in this game. Who does Tech throw on Walter Clayton? That guy's turning into a true March legend right now. Elijah Hawkins is too small. Tech's other guards are frankly a little bit too small for Clayton. Texas's defense is tough, man. Texas Tech's defense is tough. No middle defense, obviously, but Florida can shoot, and they will punish any lapse in defensive rebounding. We saw Texas Tech come out a little bit lackadaisical against Arkansas. That happens again against Florida. They're screwed. So I do lean towards Florida here, 6.5, 7.
Yeah, the Gators are rolling. They're top in offensive momentum per Haslam metric in the rest of the field at this point by a wide margin. They got that UConn scare out of their system, which I think is important, in terms of refocusing them and not having those lulls, because you know what they're going to bring in the last 10 minutes of the game. Because of their depth, they're able to just wear teams out, both from a foul perspective and also just a fatigue perspective. But I think the big storyline here is no Chance McMillan, question mark. I mean, if he does play, trying to gut out an oblique injury is usually a fool's errand. He looked like he was going to play in the last game. He gets into warmups and that flares up a little bit. He brings so much to the table as nearly a 44% shooter from long range, but also the overall spacing. Not only does that help them get better looks for the other, perimeter shooters, but also it opens up some of those entry passes to Toppin on the low block. So I think they're going to have some issues offensively here. I wanted to jump in right away. I got a 5.5. It's up to 6.5 in the market. I would also play the Gators laying 7 in this spot. All right, we transition now to the East region, the one that you're most excited to see. Two offensive juggernauts squaring off right now. Also, how soft are these rims in Newark? Arizona went
Yeah.
23 for 45 from long range, and we saw Alabama set every NCAA record. They went 25 for 51 from long range. So that, I think, absolutely has to come into play here in terms of how you're handicapping things. But even if they weren't playing at this, venue where every single three-pointer seems to be rolling in off the rim. They still have upside to score in the 90s, possibly get to 100 points in this game. So do you see this purely as a shootout? And if so, are you leaning closer to the total or side?
It should be. I don't know how Alabama stops Duke. Duke should be licking their chops against this team. They saw the BYU tape, hopefully by now. BYU's guards got to the middle of the paint every single time they wanted to. It was easy floaters. It was dump offs. That's Proctor. That's Sion James. That's Concanipple. They're going to live in that area. I think they're going to pick them apart. And nobody's guarding Cooper Flag. And that margin of victory against BYU, man, I understand that Alabama beat them by like 24 points. Those teams are not 24 points separated. 6 for 30 from three and 25 for 51, like you said, a literal record. That's a huge difference. BYU, if you strip out those 3-point shooting, that extreme shooting, I think BYU might win that game. And that might be controversial to say, but that really was the difference. And I don't think that works against Duke. Most talented team in the country, biggest team in the country, not going to be stopped. I like Duke here, -7.
I'm on over 174 and a half. I know that this is an absolutely massive number, but you have to consider a few things. If you look purely at tempo, obviously Alabama wants to play at a breakneck pace, but Duke for the majority of the season has been buried in the mid 200s in terms of their preferred pace. But basically in this stretch from mid-February to today, when they've been sped up, things have only gone better for them offensively. They're number one in KenPom adjusted offensive efficiency. So the fact of the matter is, if teams want to play that brand of basketball, they're obliging them and they're just running away from them. And when you look at games that Cooper Flag has started and finished since mid-February, the Blue Devils are averaging 95 points per game. So I think they're going to be comfortable playing with Alabama up and down. And as you mentioned, being able to get in the lane and get those easy buckets, I think that's going to be there all day. You toss in the 3-point variance, the potential for Alabama or Duke to get absolutely red hot with these Newark rims. I think there's the only side of this in terms of a total that you can play is the over. I still see this being a high possession game. And then in terms of Alabama cruising past totals in the last month, they are 9-4 in their last 13 in terms of overs. And a big reason for that is the 3-point variance, the tempo, but also books are just not catching up. They can't post these numbers high enough to be able to compete with Alabama and what they're doing offensively, and also some of their Matador defense in the lane just allowing easy looks. So I'm over on this total here. If you're listening to the show, you're probably just like me and you love gambling. And when it comes to betting, there are two things that I'm always trying to do: make it easier and make it more profitable. That's why I partnered with EdgeBoost, the financial platform that pays you cash back to wager. EdgeBoost is an online bank account that pays you for every deposit. Because with EdgeBoost via Visa debit card, you get up to 0.5% cash back on all of your sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. That's free money back in your pocket just for doing what you're already doing. It's an absolute no-brainer. This isn't some credit card gimmick. I want to make that clear. I opened my EdgeBoost debit card account. It made it even easier to deposit into my sportsbook account. No catch, no hidden fees, no minimum balance requirements, none of that. And if you've ever had a casino transaction flagged by your bank because they thought it was suspicious, or you've been given the runaround trying to fund a sportsbook account online, the Edge Boost debit card is the perfect tool. It starts with a $250,000 daily limit and will never be declined for gambling activity. It's why I was happy to make an account and open it right away. Make your betting life easier and stop leaving money on the table. Visit edgeboost.bet to sign up. And if you use promo code BBOC and deposit $25, you'll receive a $25 deposit match plus tier 2 status for faster bank deposits and more cash back. That's edgeboost.bet, promo code BBOC. All right, we're back to the bracket here, looking at the Midwest, one of the 1v2 matchups. Houston snuck past Purdue. They were lucky they weren't called for a push-off on that second-to-last offensive possession, but then Sampson gets in his bag, draws up an absolute incredible inbound play for the game winner. Tennessee, meanwhile, they finally got right against Kentucky. They absolutely dog-walked the Cats there. Now they're back to the Elite Eight for the second straight year under Rick Barnes. Ky, let me ask you this. Is it as simple in terms of a handicap as Sampson's a better coach than Barnes? I don't think anyone's going to argue otherwise. But Barnes is, back to the second weekend, make a deep run for the second straight year. He's kind of quieted some of those issues in terms of his track record in March. Where do you come down on this game?
Yeah, I think Rick Barnes is a good coach, but yeah, Kelvin Sampson is a better coach. That blob was incredible. Just a masterclass in coaching there at the end of the game. Awesome game. Two very physical teams, two teams that pass the get off the bus test. I think you can bother Tennessee a bit with pressure, and Houston's big athletic perimeter. That's going to be a new challenge for Ziegler. Now, Ziegler, he's a fifth-year senior. He's fantastic. He can maybe handle it, but he is 5'9". He's not immune to turnover issues, and Houston is probably the best in the business in scaring you as a ball handler. The balls are also susceptible on the glass. That's obviously Houston's MO. And you can't score inside against either team. So it comes down to who's the better outside shooting team. Houston's the best outside shooting team in the country. That's kind of a little known fact. They don't shoot a ton of threes, but man, they make them at a high clip. So Houston, better shooting team, better with the ball, better on the glass. And you have the Samson factor, relatively short spread. I like Houston -3.5 here.
I'm actually going to go Oppo here. I'm going to go Tennessee on the money line. I called for the Vols to win this region, make it to the Final Four earlier in our March Madness coverage. So I'm going to stick with it because since February 1st, Tennessee has been one of the most balanced teams in the country. 11th in Torvik offense, 10th in defense, and their guard play has really been elevated at the right time. Ziegler, as you mentioned, is someone who is undersized and sometimes can struggle with that on-ball pressure, but he's been such a stat sheet stuffer. He's been able to get to the line more often during this run, really dating back to the SEC tournament. He's been able to facilitate for his teammates. He's coming off a Tennessee game. And Lanier is the player that was, had that high ceiling at the midseason mark. He went into a slump, and we all kind of questioned how far this Tennessee offense could go unless he got his shooting stroke and confidence back. Well, it's back. I mean, at this point, he's got 3 games in this tournament run. He's scored north of 20 in 2 of them. I see the offense being enough to hang around. And I still have my questions when you look at the way that Houston has allowed teams to hang around with them during their run
Mhm.
here at March Madness. The Zags, essentially, if they'd been able to get off a shot on that final possession, could have taken them to overtime. Obviously, they were fortunate not to have an offensive foul whistle against Purdue. Both of those teams, while I think there's certainly upside on the Zags offense, and Purdue had those, top 2 players in Braden Smith, and everything they do in the pick and roll game to be able to take advantage certainly of things on the offensive end. It's still, when you compare them to Tennessee, I think Tennessee is a higher upside and an opportunity to win a rock fight. If this game is played in the high
Mhm.
50s or low 60s, that's Tennessee's bread and butter. I think Houston can slow games down and grind teams, down and kind of take them out of what they want to do in transition and, potentially what they want to do in a helter-skelter kind of game. Tennessee's comfortable with this brand of basketball. And I think at some point in this chalk madness, we have to have somebody score an upset. So I'm going to go with Tennessee here. All right, we're going to close out with the South region, another 1v2 matchup. We got Auburn against Michigan State. And this is essentially Auburn East. They have all their fans in Atlanta. It's about a 90-minute drive from campus. They're going to have a huge crowd advantage. They used the crowd advantage and 19 offensive rebounds to put Michigan away in the second half last night. Michigan State, meanwhile, had a battle back. They had to dig out of a 10-point hole against Ole Miss. Jace Richardson went for 20 points, and they were absolutely nails from the foul line as they've been this entire season. Auburn has been one of those teams that we were kind of questioning. Did they peak too early? They kind of looked like they were sleepwalking at the ends of the SEC season and into the SEC tournaments. They've certainly turned it on if you just go by the second half against the Wolverines. Where do you come down on Bruce Pearl, and do you think his team is in the right headspace to make this a total run to the national championship?
Yeah, I think we might be on the same side in this one. Yeah, I think Sparty hangs here. They're so elite in transition. This gets kind of missed with Michigan State. Ball goes in, they're running. Off the glass, they're running. Ole Miss did a great job at countering that, and Chris Beard's a fantastic coach. Bruce Pearl is too, but it's really hard to stop Michigan State consistently in transition. Auburn does it at an average mark in the national scale per synergy. Michigan State's going to live the line. Foul prone is kind of like Auburn's mantra they have across their jersey. I think Michigan State wins the glass battle, or at least can compete. Fantastic rebounding team, just so sound fundamentally, and plenty of size to throw at Broom. Not the most mobile of bigs, that's a concern, but they've done well at closing out on shooters in the arc all season, defending the perimeter without actually taking away the three necessarily. Have to maintain poise against Auburn's pressure because that can be an issue for Michigan State at times. They've been just okay handling the press. And they're fairly young in the backcourt outside of Jaden Akins. But I think they hang. Izzo, obviously a great coach. Jace Richardson, get him the ball against Ole Miss. Get him the ball. He is their best offensive player and playmaker. He needs the rock. He's going to be a star. So Michigan State +5.5 for me.
Yeah, I'm on Sparty plus the points as well. You talked about it. Great rebounding, great 3-point defense, and they get to the line a ton. I equate that to a football team that can run the ball, play great defense, and shrink the game down. those things just tend to travel. They're not 3-point reliant where they're a team like Alabama that needs to make, 15 triples. Almost any shot from the perimeter is kind of a bonus for Michigan State. And the rebounding element, I think, will make it a little bit more difficult for Auburn to get, that high points per possession average in the half court because so much of what they do can rely on those second chance buckets. So 5.5, I think, is just a bit too rich. I do see Auburn sneaking by in a one possession win, which brings me to my question. If you had to revise at this point, sometimes you want to just stick with it at this juncture in the tournament, but would you revise your national title pick and who you see facing off in the national title game?
No, for me, it's still Duke and Florida, and that's just boring because they are the top two teams in Ken Palm right now. But yeah, Duke's that good, and I love this Florida team, so I'm sticking with Duke over Florida.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Duke against Auburn in my national title game. I think that Duke has only impressed me further in terms of their offensive upside. We've talked about it on the podcast before. For whatever reason, maybe it's the Cooper Flag element sucking up all the oxygen. Maybe it's how dynamic they are defensively in the half court. It seems to be that their offense being number one across the board in all the metric sites is getting lost in the shuffle a little bit. This is a special offensive team that can beat you in so many different ways. And then Auburn, I think they finally shook off a little bit of that rust and that malaise that they had late in the season, and now they're starting to play closer to how they were early in the season when they won the Maui Invitational and looked so impressive, knocking off ranked teams. It seemed like every single week. So I'll go with Duke against Auburn in the Natty. That's it for us. A programming note: we'll also have full Final Four coverage and content coming out this week with Stucky on the podcast. So be sure to subscribe there. Give us a 5-star review, like, rate, review anywhere that you listen. Best of luck on your bets this weekend, and cheers.
Kai, once again, thank you very much.
All good. Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
enjoy